welcome to the Wacky World of Work. I'm James Tehrani, your host, and today on the program we have a very special guest. He is the legendary producer of numerous classic TV shows and movies such as All in the Family, Good Times, The Jeffersons, Maude, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, and many, many more. It is an honor to have Norman Lear with me today. We'll be talking about his autobiography, Even This I Get to Experience, and his career. How are you doing today, Mr. Lear?
I'm doing well, thanks. Turn that book around once more. Even this I get to experience. I'm saying that of this interview.
Yes.
How about that? Even this I get to experience.
I'm glad you got to experience it with me. So, since today is April 22nd, Administrative Professionals Day, do you have a shout out for Danny Thomas's secretary who basically gave you your big break in Hollywood?
It was his agent's secretary.
His agent's secretary.
I had called his agents at noon when I had a guess that he'd be out to lunch, and talking to her as fast as I can. I pretended to be a New York Times writer who had just spent 2 days with Danny Thomas. I was at the airport. They were calling my plane. I had to get on the plane. I was going to write this piece about Thomas on the plane, file it when I got to New York. Ooh, could you please give me his number? And she gave it to me.
That's an amazing story, and I think the most amazing part of that story is when you actually called Danny Thomas, he took your call, and then you didn't have anything prepared.
Well, he started by saying, how'd you get this number? And when he heard how I got it, it amused him. So that allowed him to talk a little bit. And he happened to be looking for something he needed to do the following night at Ciro's, which was a major nightclub at the time, and it was a friar's event, so that meant his friends would be there. They all knew his routines. He was looking for something so old that they hadn't seen it, or something new, but how could he learn it? I told him, what he had was short enough to learn, and it flowed easily, and he said, well, get over here right away. And I said, we'll be there in about 3.5 hours. And he said you calling from Hollywood? I'm in Beverly Hills. You could be here in 15 minutes. What the hell are you talking about? Well, we really hadn't written this thing yet, but I couldn't tell him that. So
Why not wait till you had something written before you called him? Were you just that excited?
But I didn't think I was going to get him in 3 minutes. I mean, I thought I was going to get a number and then hold it, wait to call. If I was lucky, I was going to get the number.
That's amazing. So tell me about, what was the most collaborative environment you ever worked in, and what was the most dysfunctional, and what made them so?
Well, the environments have been collaborative. I don't know how to judge the most collaborative. We were 3, 4, 5, as many as 6 writers, and entirely collaborative. Somebody at the buck stopped somewhere, and in my case it was with me. So I had to make the decisions when they were called for it. It was so collaborative, we usually got there together. Oh yeah, let's do that.
Sure. So how hard was it to balance all that? I mean, you were working on, about 55 television shows at a time? How were you able to manage that?
Well, when I sought to replace myself, I realized that had I been asked to come in and take my place, I could not have done it. What happened was I grew up in the forest. When I had 2 shows, when the climate and 3 shows called for a new ear, or another way to find an hour, or I grew it. It happened quite naturally, expansively, but naturally.
Yeah.
And I have no other way of explaining it.
Okay, that makes sense. So earlier in your career, you worked with Jackie Gleason. You talk about that a little bit in your book. So what lessons did you learn from that experience with? He wasn't following your script. He was kind of improvising. So were there any management lessons there that you took from that?
Well, he only had one or two or three lines. He was a guest star on the Jack Haley Ford Star Review. It was before he became the Jackie Gleason we all know
Hmm.
and love. Uh, so he was a one of about seven comedians who are playing in a sketch on the Jack Haley show. But he still was that unique. He refused. He never said the same line twice, uh, and
And away he goes.
and the way he went.
Away he went. Okay, I'm going over your personal backstory, if you will, from the book. You talk a lot about your father and your background at Coney Island as a salesman. Your dad was a salesman. I'm curious, outside of maybe Walter on Maude, none of your real main characters were salespeople. Was that something you consciously avoided? And how did you go about picking the careers for some of your main characters?
No, I didn't avoid making anybody a salesman. Um, there was no. Archie had many jobs. He was a dock loader for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But when we needed him to do, actually, when we had an idea for him to be a cab driver, it was easy enough to require him to have a second job. Uh, the Jefferson was a haberdasher. It There was no real search to make him a haberdasher. That's what we decided. I mean, he was cleaning and dyeing establishment.
Right.
And then when he started to do better, he had three or four cleaning and dyeing emporiums. And but I don't know, ask me something tough.
Okay, I'll ask you something tough. So, what was it like to have the Black Panthers in your office telling you we need a show where black characters are going to be well established in the community, getting away from good times?
Well, that turned out to be a good thing. Uh, and it was fun. It was fun. I took him over to a window and parted the shade, and I said, "See down there?" And I pointed about three stories down. I said, "Where that yard is, you'll find some cans there, and the garbage man usually hangs around there. Why don't you go down and take a look?" And he calmed down. And then we sat down and talked. And he had hoped there would be a show on the air with an upscale, with a black family that was doing well, as many black families were indeed doing. And that was a terrific idea. The Jeffersons were next door to the Bunkers,
Mm-hmm.
and it was clear there was a show in Sherman Hemsley and
Isabel Sanford, sorry.
Isabel, yeah, Wheezy as he called her, and that was it. Moving on up, we were going to move them up to the east side of New York, Upper East Side, and that suggested the song. And suddenly there was the song, which is now an anthem,
Of course.
and 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 George Jefferson moved on up.
Now, you talk in the book about how easy that show was to put together on a weekly basis, but you also talk about some of the difficulties you had on Good Times and All in the Family with dealing with the talent. How were you able to get the talent to go with your ideas? And in a creative environment, it's got to be very tough to get creative people on board when you have everybody's creative.
Yeah, and everybody had different ideas, and you have to understand the weight on Esther Roll and John Amos as the senior members of that cast, the parents. Suddenly, they were not just two actors, but they were two actors who were representing to their own people all there was on television of their own people.
Sure.
So when you think about that, you realize that was a heavy responsibility. Wait a second, there has not been a set of black parents on television, and I'm modeling that. So the way that came out was when we wanted to do a show, film of her daughter, Esther Roll's daughter in the show, was just a beautiful young woman. And we wanted to do a story about a kid that wanted, a young man that wanted to make love to her. And she was talking about whether she would, how she would handle a date where the guy was coming on to her. And Esther didn't want to go near that subject. Just let's not do that. Now, the reason for that was all that she was representing and the concern that they get it right. So we reached an impasse, and I wanted very much to do that show. I thought it was important for Thelma and for the family, because it was a family problem I saw in my own life and elsewhere. And I finally said to Esther and the others, look, you guys know the surface of your lives a great deal better than I do. So we're going to depend on you for the patina, for that, what are black people talking about at the moment, or the way they handle it.
Now, were there black writers on the show?
Oh yeah, there were two, maybe there were three at one point, black writers on the show. And but I said, I am a father, and I am an uncle, and I am a brother, and I am all those things you fellas are. I'm talking to John Amos. And I'll make those decisions. You guys make the patina, the sound of it, the feeling of that sound.
Sure.
But those things we're all living through, black or white. I'm going to have to make some of those decisions. And we did that. We did that show with Thelma, and it was terrific. And I wouldn't have had to go to bed at 16 with anybody. Done that black or white. It had nothing to do with it.
Speaking of Thelma, real briefly, the news just came out recently that Ben Powers passed away. Do you have any recollection of working with him, very quickly?
Lovely man and fine actor. It's so sad that he went so young.